Yet another 24 hours of silence from Tottenham transfer-wise. Oh, except of course, despite having 14 players out injured, we're letting yet another young talent leave the club on loan. Is that Ange sending a message to the board? Meanwhile, of course, there's more bad news on the first team injury front too. I'll be talking about all that as well as other Premier League transfer talk, including Bayern's Mathys Tel wanting to come to the Premier League. Is it time for agent Harry Kane to get his 15% on behalf of the fans that love him so much? All that and more on today's episode of Daily Premier League Transfer News. Guys, thank you so much for all your support, for watching and listening. If you're on YouTube, please do give this video a like. Also, please press subscribe. I'm getting so close now to 15,000 subscribers. So if you like daily Premier League transfer news, always, of course, starting with my beloved Tottenham Hotspur, then please do press that subscribe button and join the community. Also, you can become a member, only £1 a month. Details of how in the description box below. But let's get started. And I've said in my title today, Tottenham scraping the transfer barrel as it gets towards the end of the January transfer window. It does seem to me like Scott Munn, Johan Lange, Daniel Levy are all in the mud at the moment, desperately trying to find a forward who will come into Tottenham at the last minute. And the latest link is to AS Monaco and Swiss forward Breel Mbolo, valued at €20 million. That's according to L'Equipe in France. Now, Mbolo, back in the day, highly rated as a very, very talented player, and he's had a decent career, 27 years old now. However, his injury record is absolutely appalling. If you go on Transfer Market and take a look at his injury record, just injuries every single season, and last year, the worst of all, an ACL that kept him out for most of the season. So why Tottenham are scraping around, looking at players whose injuries are as bad as that when we cannot get players out on the pitch ourselves is absolutely beyond me, and as far as I'm concerned, just complete and utter madness. So here's me hoping that Breel Mbolo is just a name being touted about by agents rather than someone we're actually really looking at, because if we bring in a player who just gets injured straight away, and even if it's on a loan like Timo Werner, he's just sitting there not getting game time because he's injured, it's just a waste of money. Meanwhile, the highly believable Daily Mail report that Tottenham are ready to offer Marcus Rashford an escape route from Old Trafford for the remainder of the season. Rashford's ideal move is to go to Barcelona, but of course they really struggle with their finances. They can't even properly tie up Dani Olmo for the rest of the season, although they did get that through the courts, but now the Spanish League are trying to get that decision reversed. So there's just a lot of politics going on at Barcelona. So whether Marcus Rashford will get his dream kind of loan move there remains to be seen. It does strike me that with, what are we looking at, kind of 5 days left of the window, that there will be a scrabble around for Marcus Rashford towards the last few days. And if Tottenham can be into that and involved in that, could Marcus Rashford look at Tottenham and an opportunity to play in for instance, a Carabao Cup semi-final straight away, an FA Cup game away at Aston Villa straight away, and potentially a Europa League run as somewhere where he could come and really boost back his reputation and show that he's still got what it takes to play. He's getting absolute pelters at the moment from his manager, Ruben Amorim, who's claimed that he's not training hard enough, and therefore from a lot of the kind of Manchester United influencers and a lot of the media and pundits, all saying that he's letting the Man United fans down. Well, Marcus, there's a club here who needs a wide forward where we will come to you, we will give the ball to you all the time and you can run at defenders. Come here, come to Spurs, and I think personally, but let me know in the comments, Spurs fans, what you think, but I think personally, if you are fit enough and you are up to speed and you can get on the pitch, then you could come and score goals for Spurs and help us have an amazing second half of the season and become a press story again for positive reasons. Now, listen, of course, wages are going to be a problem, but I think because it's getting so deep into the transfer window, Manchester United are going to be resigned to the fact that they're going to have to pay off about half of his wages for the rest of the season, which leaves it at about 150 grand a week, and that is something that I think Tottenham could stomach. So I think if you are Tottenham, if you are Daniel Levy and Johan Lange in the last few days of this window, you get onto Marcus Rashford's people and say, if you want to become the main man somewhere again, somewhere where all the football comes through you and you can just literally, in terms of how Ange asks his wide forward to defend, you can literally just worry about attacking all the time. You don't even have to defend your back post because it's not something that Tottenham do. then come to Spurs for the rest of the season. See how you do, and you never know. You might just love it. But let me know, guys, like I said, what you think in the comments. Is that pie in the sky? Am I being completely mad to think that that is something that could come through the door? Similar, to be honest, with a few reports over the last week or so that Tottenham and Johan Lange are still interested in Jack Grealish as well. A very similar vibe where it's like, as it reaches the end of the window, is Tottenham more of a potential destination where someone like Grealish and Rashford would think, maybe I can rebuild my career there? Like I said, though, wages will be a problem, and Man City, again, would have to pay off about half of his wages for the rest of the year. But who knows, as it reaches the end of the window, if these players actually want to play, rather than just sitting on their money in their really beautiful houses, then Tottenham could be a place where they could not only play, but they could make stories and narratives for themselves in the cup competitions for the rest of the season. Probably unlikely, I'd say, because, of course, this is Daniel Levy, this is Spurs, but he is under pressure, Levy, to get exciting things happening at Spurs, and those kind of deals, kind of similar to like the Rafa van der Vaart excitement back in the day, they're the kind of things that could bring the fans at least a tiny bit back on side. Okay, a report about our potential next manager came out yesterday. Thomas Frank has a £9 million release clause in his Brentford contract. However, of course, that is £9 million. Tottenham have paid a lot of money in compensation and severance for managers down the years. Thomas Frank is rumoured to be on Spurs' list in terms of succession planning for the next manager after Ange Postecoglou. And I'm not saying that's going to be anytime soon necessarily, although my hunch is that if he goes out to Liverpool, and especially if we were to get absolutely tonked in that game, then maybe they would look to make a change. But I don't think Thomas Frank would leave Brentford mid-season anyway. But I do feel £9 million, probably a little more than Daniel Levy would be willing to pay to get the next manager in. What do you guys think? Is that an amount of money compensation-wise that Levy would be willing to accept somewhere down the line? I'm not so sure. Also, some reports yesterday that Edin Terzic, again, seen as a genuine candidate to replace Ange Postecoglou. The club believed that he could offer a potential for long-term growth and were impressed by his tenure at Borussia Dortmund. Of course, if you were watching my videos a couple of weeks ago, Terzic was asked to go and join one of the Turkish clubs, I think it was, as their manager, and his agent came out and said, no, we're actually waiting for an offer from Tottenham Hotspur, which to me seems like they've probably spoken to him to some degree. I don't know. There's a lot of kind of conflicting reports about Terzic in that he's an exciting manager. He got Borussia Dortmund to the Champions League final, but also that he can be quite pragmatic in his play. I'll be honest, I haven't seen enough of his teams to fully know the real deal. I'd have to do a bit of a deep dive. But for now, I think Ange has the job for now. If Ange gets us through to the League Cup final, he will keep his job. He needs to get some league results, that's for sure. But if he could make next week an incredible week for Spurs by beating Liverpool over the two legs and by beating Aston Villa in the FA Cup, and of course it all has to start tomorrow night by beating Elfsborg and getting us through to the top 8 of the Europa League, then I think Ange will keep his job if he can manage to do those, or maybe 2 out of the 3 of those. I think he would keep his job to the end of the season. Okay, I mentioned in the opening, didn't I, that Tottenham willing to let another of their young impressive players go, and that is Yang MinHuk, who's only just come in from South Korea from the K-League. He is moving to QPR on loan today. That is according to Alistair Gold and other reputable sources. So clearly, Yang MinHuk in training hasn't done enough to show Ange Postecoglou that not only could he threaten the first team, but even that he's worth having on the books for the rest of the season when we've got 14 players out injured. That is why I mentioned, is this, again, a bit of a mind game, a bit of a message to the Spurs board? You can let this player go out on loan because I'm not going to put him anywhere near my first team, but I need the bodies in. For me, surely that has got to show some confidence that we're going to get some kind of players through the door, because Werner is out, Sonny is on his last legs, Mikey Moore is only just coming back from illness. And it's not like we are blessed with forward options. So I don't doubt that Yang MinHuk is incredibly raw. He also looks very small physically and very young. But can we really afford that much to let another player go out on loan? I don't know. I'm surprised we let Dorrington go on loan to Aberdeen, considering just how many defensive injuries we have as well. One positive about that loan move to QPR, though, is that QPR are on a good run at the moment, and also Yang MinHuk getting a move to the Championship, I think, with his kind of lack of experience in English football, does show that they must be pretty impressed with him. Because if you think about some of our other loanees, some have gone out to Westerlo in Belgium, Alfie Devine and obviously Vuskovic. And then some even lower down, Leighton Orient for Jamie Donnelly, etc. So Yang MinHuk must be pretty highly rated to get a championship loan off the bat. Okay, I mentioned Mathys Tel at the top of the show. He has made the decision to leave Bayern Munich, and it might happen this January. Chelsea are interested in him, but also other top Premier League clubs are active and in contact with him now. And apparently, according to Florian Plettenberg and Fabrizio Romano, the race is open. Now, he is a player who, of course, can play all across the front line. And another one where if I'm Tottenham's transfer team and the Johan Lang and the sporting director Scott Munn and Daniel Levy, if I'm getting to talk to some of his people, I'm saying you can be one of the main men at Tottenham Hotspur, Mathys Tel. We need players in that forward line. Yes, you can go to Chelsea, but they've got about 6 top-level forwards there. Are you going to get a game? Whereas if you could come to Spurs, you will get in the team straight away and you will have chances of starting and making a name for yourself. And that's why I mentioned agent Harry Kane. Could Harry Kane be in Mathys Tel's ear and saying, listen, go to Spurs on a loan with an option to buy for the rest of the season. You'll enjoy it there. You'll get games, you'll score goals, and you'll be in the Premier League. Man United, of course, also entering the race for Tel, as they are with pretty much everyone else at the moment. But they could only potentially get him in if Rashford or Garnacho are sold. And lots of talks about that happening. So it does seem like there's going to be a bit of a transfer merry-go-round towards the end of this window, and once some of the kind of bricks fall, maybe others will follow. Let's see what happens. More terrible injury news came out yesterday, of course. Paul O'Keefe said James Maddison's injury prognosis 2 to 3 weeks out, meaning he will miss the Liverpool second leg and the Aston Villa game. I mean, it doesn't rain, it pours at Tottenham Hotspur. Really, really appalling. He had a good last game, didn't he, Maddis? But again, I have to say, I'll caveat it once again. I don't want Ange to leave. I love Ange. I'm desperate for it to work for him. But he said, didn't he, after the last game, Pape Matar shouldn't have started that game. Players should not be playing. Players should not be playing if they're injured and if they're doubts. And Ange is throwing them in. And I will give the other caveat as well, of course. The squad isn't strong enough to deal with that. And that is down to the board. And that is down to us being kind of halfway through the painful rebuild rather than at the end of the painful rebuild. So it's a terrible knock-on effect, all of this stuff. But to lose Maddis before the most important week of the season, gutting, and once again, another example of why it's just going to be so difficult to go away at Anfield and get the result that we need. The only positive I can think about with that game in the second leg of the League Cup is that with everything going on at Liverpool at the moment, with them top of the league, with them top of their Champions League group, with the FA Cup coming up before the next week and whatever, the Carabao Cup, I'm not suggesting they're not going to be bothered about it. Of course they are. But it's going to be the least of their worries. It's going to be the one they least care about. And that's why I think probably and hopefully the atmosphere at Anfield won't quite be as raucous and as loud and as intimidating as it would normally be. And we've just got to hope that kind of the Liverpool fans as well as the players are just a bit more like, look, this is the League Cup. Let's just knock it around and try not to get injured. Because the other side of it for us is that for that game is that it is the biggest one for Spurs. That's the thing. It's the biggest game for Spurs. And therefore they will be pumped for it. And actually there's a stat that I think does give us a bit of hope going into that, which is that Tottenham have lost just one of their last 12 matches outside of the Premier League, where they've only won one of their last 12 in the Premier League. So that shows how they have just been far more up for those cup games than they have been the league games recently, and they realise within the squad that it's all about the cup games. So let's hope that those kind of two conflicting levels of complacency and conflicting feelings about the League Cup will allow Tottenham to get a result at Anfield next week. And if we can, then you'd look towards the final date, which I think is around maybe the 16th of March, the middle of March, and you'd look to have all of your first-team players back for that. Mickey van der Ven, this is according to Paul O'Keefe as well, is on course to be back in the Tottenham squad for the Elfsborg game on Thursday. He has been seen training this week. For me, I have to say, and it's only my opinion, let me know what you think in the comments, I would not put Mickey van der Ven in the squad on Thursday. I would just say, Mickey, just keep training, keep calm, and maybe at a push, we'll have you on the subs bench against Brentford at the weekend. But really what we're looking at is having you properly fit. And I mean properly fit with no even sense of a possibility of getting re-injured for that Liverpool game away next Thursday. So maybe ideally for me, on the bench against Brentford, maybe bring him on for 10 minutes at the end. And even that, I would say only in a really best case scenario. And then just get a couple of weeks, a week and a half of fitness into your legs before that Liverpool game. Okay, relevant to what I said about that kind of cup game stat compared to league game stat, Ange Postecoglou was asked on the confidence he has for the rest of the season and the uneasiness in the stands at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium the other day. He said, in some respects, that's in our hands. In at least 2 competitions, we're in good shape to make an impact. I think you can turn that around pretty quickly with some positive results at the right time. I mean, you've got to give it to Ange Postecoglou. He retains this level of confidence that he's going to get some kind of good results soon that will turn the confidence around. Well, for me, I think, yes, that could start against Elfsborg tomorrow, and here's hoping they manage to do it somehow. But it won't be easy, because don't forget, Elfsborg have not played for a long time in their national league, except for games, in Europe, because their league isn't happening at the moment. It's their break, so they will be fresh in terms of legs. But Tottenham should be good enough to beat Elfsborg. Also, Ange was asked about how often he speaks to Daniel Levy, which I thought was interesting and worth bringing you. I don't really speak regularly to him. He lets me get on with it. During this January period, there's always regular contact, but that's not what I'm talking about. All I'm saying is I come into the club and I feel like everyone, all the players and staff, are in the belief of what we're trying to do. I don't feel like I'm trying to convince people in this moment about what we're doing and where we're heading. That's where I get the solace, say, okay, I still believe we can. I still think there's an opportunity here. I really believe in this group of players. Even today, when I asked of them, talking about after the Leicester game, some of the performances were outstanding considering what they've been through. To me, that's all positive. But ultimately, the fact that we've lost another game of football, the focus is on that. Yes, the focus, of course, is on that, and we can't keep losing like this in the Premier League. It's really gone too far. But, I have to give him credit for his confidence regarding the cup competitions and him feeling that we can do something special this season. And let's be honest, guys, and let me know how you feel about it in the comments. Let's talk about it. But if Ange pulls a trophy out of the bag from this season, we will all be talking about this bleak midwinter as something that we managed to get through. And we'd even, I think, dare I say it, or correct me if I'm wrong, dare I say it, I think we'd even be saying, wow, Daniel Levy was so brave and patient during that period where a lot of people were calling for the manager's head, but he didn't. He stuck with it, and we've got a trophy to show for it. And that is what everyone at Spurs has been desperate for over the past few years, certainly since 2008 when we won the last League Cup against Chelsea at Wembley, which I was there. It was an amazing day. Winner scored by Jonathan Woodgate, of course. Listen, how much of it is Ange just trying to, grimly cling on to his job by remaining positive and trying to pull the wool over people's eyes by saying he thinks things can happen in the cup competitions? Who knows? I'm hoping that he genuinely believes it and he really thinks that in those cup games we will find a way, because I think he's going to need to. Because I think if next week we go out of the League Cup and the FA Cup, and heaven forbid we have a bad result tomorrow night in the Europa League, and that leaves us with a 2-legged playoff coming up at the beginning of the next month, then I think, unfortunately, Ange would be put out to pasture. Okay, guys, just before I go on to the more wide-ranging Premier League transfer news, once again, thank you so much for your support. Please do give this video a like, and if you're not already a subscriber to my channel, please do press that subscribe button. I bring you daily transfer news, always starting with my team, Tottenham, and I'm getting so close to that 15,000 subscriber mark. Let's get there together. I love the community that we're building here. Such an engaged channel. I really appreciate you guys, really do. Okay, starting at Manchester United, and I'm sure you saw yesterday, Man United have a here we go with Lecce on the details of the deal for Patrick Dorgu, the player who Tottenham were after for the last year, and Manchester United have come in and they've shown the size of their club, and they've shown that because they are probably not quite doing as badly in the league as us, Patrick Dorgu has had his head turned and said, actually, I'd rather go to Man United. Do you know what? It's probably also helped that Man United do not, as far as I can tell, have a single left-footed player available to them because Luke Shaw gets injured so much. The deal is worth £25.2 million plus £6.3 million in add-ons. Looks like a good signing for Manchester United. I messaged my mate Richard yesterday. He's a big Man United fan, and I said, Patrick Dorgu, who's been on Tottenham's list for a year, enjoy. Inevitable he'll get injured in the first game, seeing as he was linked with Spurs. Be interesting to see how he does in the Premier League, won't it? Because I really felt genuinely that he would be a Tottenham player. So let's see what happens. Meanwhile, Roma want to sign Man United's Brazilian midfielder Casemiro on loan until the end of the season, but a move for them to get him is dependent on the club selling Argentina international Leandro Paredes. Meanwhile, Napoli and Juventus are monitoring Rasmus Højlund, with the Denmark forward not really having impressed Ruben Amorim. He's raw, isn't he, Rasmus Højlund? You can see that he's got some talent. He's a decent finisher at times, but he's definitely young and raw. Wow, Man United only really recently spent about big money on him, so it would be a big surprise if he were to leave for an Italian club. Over to Man City, and they've offered what's been described as an expensive loan to get Douglas Luiz in for the rest of the season from Juventus, which could include an obligation to buy. Douglas Luiz obviously went to Juventus recently from Aston Villa, and he is also another one on Spurs' list who need a number 6, but Man City look to be ahead of the game on that one, and yet another example of how Spurs cannot get the players they're interested in through the door. Over to Anfield, Al Hilal are the favourites to get Mo Salah from Liverpool this summer, since they have cancelled the contract of Neymar, who has gone back to Santos. Meanwhile, some big moves potentially to and from Aston Villa. Al Nassr in Saudi Arabia are going to decide, apparently today, whether to close the deal that they've agreed for Victor Boniface from Bayer Leverkusen or to get John Duran from Aston Villa. The agreement for Boniface has been sorted with Al Nassr, and Duran is in the mix. Darwin Núñez from Liverpool is another target for Saudi Arabia, who are flexing their transfer muscles yet again. But they are pushing with significant resources to try and sign John Duran. Villa would accept a deal of €70 plus from the Saudi club, reports Équipe in France. Meanwhile, Wolves are expecting one or more offers for their Brazilian forward Matheus Cunha before the transfer deadline, with Villa themselves, as well as Arsenal, Forest and Spurs, amongst others, interested in the 25-year-old. Bayer Leverkusen now lead the race for Evan Ferguson from Brighton, who is willing to leave, and Brighton are willing to let him go. Apparently, they've already turned down one offer from a Premier League club for him. Everton set for a busy end to the transfer window, with David Moyes keen to strengthen at left-back, central midfield and centre-forward, and they could look to agree loan deals for Ben Chilwell, Kane Chukwuemeka and or Kiernan Dewsbury-Hall from Chelsea. Meanwhile, Leicester are plotting a move for Brighton defender Tariq Lamptey, who's had a real drop-off, hasn't he, in the last few years. It was only kind of a couple of years ago or so that he was really deemed to be a huge Premier League talent, and Tottenham are interested in him, but the 24-year-old is now in the final 6 months of his contract, and Leicester are hoping that they can persuade Brighton to cash in on him this January. West Ham are hoping to reach a pre-contract agreement with Lille midfielder Angel Gomez, who of course is on Tottenham's list as well. That's another one according to L'Équipe in France. And Shakhtar Donetsk have sent a €15 million package proposal to West Ham for their Brazilian winger Luis Guilherme. He only joined the club in the summer, but he is keen to leave, and West Ham are keen to let him go. Cheers guys for watching, really appreciate it. Again, if you haven't already, please do press a like on this video on YouTube and subscribe. Let's get me up to 15,000 subscribers. Join the community, guys, if you like daily Premier League transfer news, always of course starting with my team, Tottenham Hotspur. Enjoy your hump day, guys. Thanks a lot. Goodbye.